Hello, my friends. Thank you for joining me at Evolutionary Energy Arts. And this is something that's really fascinating to me. And I feel like after having spent some time delving into many different theories as to how things work here on the planet, in the universe, with what's going on around us, my intuition is just telling me that this might be what is really happening in some ways. So, have you ever noticed how you could put all the continents right together as a nice little tidy jigsaw puzzle, and they really do fit pretty much right together? And some have called it Pangea in the past, when all the continents were together. And the theory is there was just one large ocean and all the continents were together in one area. Perhaps that's not the case. Perhaps it's slightly different. Perhaps when all the continents fit so tightly together, there was no ocean. And perhaps the ocean has come about as the entire planet has expanded. And I'm sure there's a lot of you saying, oh, that is freaking crazy, get your head out of your ass, that type of thing. Well, one theory that has been kind of thrown by the wayside that is starting to make the rounds again is an expanding Earth theory. And so we know about plate tectonics, and we know about theories regarding what exactly is at the center of the Earth. But perhaps, the mainstream scientific community doesn't have it right. Would you be surprised? Or perhaps they do have it right, but they want to sell us something else. Would you be more or less surprised at that? So one of the theories is that the very early Earth had basically a frozen core, and now we have a gas-filled or plasma core. That has caused the Earth itself to expand and stretch. The expansion and the stretching has caused, the appearance of plate movement. In reality, what is going on is, the plates are being broken up. We know, at the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, for instance, there's expansion there. There's expansion in the oceans. That's where the expansion is. And if we look at the age of the plate areas, it's the youngest in the oceans and at the ridges. The oldest areas are in the land masses. And if you're familiar with Dutch Sinise, and he talks about the North American craton, for instance, which is the oldest, crust portion of North America. And we're going to touch on Dutch Sinise and his freaking awesome YouTube channel a little bit later. If you want to learn about earthquakes, and this man can give you, predictions on earthquakes with 80 to 90% accuracy, just repeatedly. And really, he has explained things so simply that anybody could pick it up and understand it. It's not like it's a great mystery like the scientists in the mainstream want to make it out to be. And so the areas that are new are the areas of the ocean floor, and that's where the expansion is happening. So think about this in regards to a star, for instance. As a star heats up and expands, they go through cycles, and they'll go from being smaller to larger as the expansion goes on, eventually become red giants. And they're actually less intense, but they are expanding outwards. So, the expanding Earth theory or Earth hypothesis asserts that the position and the relative movement of the continents is at least partially due to the volume of the Earth increasing. Conversely, geophysical global cooling was a hypothesis that various features could be explained by Earth contracting. And it's very interesting. In 1889, 1909, Roberto Mantovani published a hypothesis of Earth expansion and continental drift. He assumed that a closed continent covered the entire surface of a smaller Earth, and it does fit. They actually do go entirely together, and you would have one landmass, one rather small Earth compared to what we have today. Thermal expansion led to volcanic activity which broke the landmass into smaller continents. These continents drifted away from each other because of further expansion at the rip zones where the ocean currents lie. Although Alfred Wegener noted some similarities in his own hypothesis of continental drift, he did not mention Earth expansion as the cause of the drift. In Mantovani's hypothesis, a compromise between Earth expansion and Earth contraction is the theory of thermal cycles by Irish physicist John Joly. He assumed that heat flow from radioactive decay inside the Earth surpasses the cooling of the Earth's exterior. Together with British geologist Arthur Holmes, Joly proposed a hypothesis in which the Earth loses its heat by cyclic periods of expansion. In their hypothesis, expansion leads to cracks and joints in the Earth's interior that could fill with magma. This was followed by a cooling phase where magma would freeze and become solid rock again, causing Earth to shrink. So, very interesting theory. And it is one of the longest running and most controversial theories in geology. And it does make sense on so many levels, especially when we start putting into the theory the plasma component. Now, most of us think of the Earth as having a solid core. Let me go over to here. There we go. Structure of the Earth, right? So we have the crust, 6 to 50 kilometers deep, then the upper mantle, transitional zone, a lower mantle, an outer core, and then an inner core which is solid. So the outer core liquid, inner core solid. But perhaps there is no solid inner core, and perhaps it's actually plasma, a different state of matter, as there have been some experiments done recently that show that would make perfect sense, especially with the magnetism of the Earth. So this article also touches on the fact of the age of the various areas on the Earth, because it does go together like a gigantic jigsaw puzzle, and you can make a perfectly round sphere putting all the continents together. And again, where the continents are, the rock is much older than where the ocean is. So very, very key point there. And so I want to bring up what we're experiencing today. So what do we got going on now? We have these mystery booms. We have areas right now where water is all of a sudden disappearing. And then, receding, and it's like, where did it go? And then all of a sudden, it'll come back again. Now, we also have rivers completely drying up. And now we have in the Bahamas, the ocean flooding in and splitting one of the Bahama Islands in two. Why is that happening when there's no storm surge nearby, where there's no storm period to affect it? And look at what we have in Peru this morning. We have huge cracks where the Earth is expanding. And 60 different homes have fallen into these cracks. So what's really going on? Well, perhaps the Earth is expanding due to a decrease in the magnetosphere. As we know, from 1842 to the year 2000, we lost about 10% of the magnetosphere. From 2000 to 2015, we lost another 5%. And now some scientists are saying that in the last 3 years, we lost another 5%. So it's speeding up. So if it's speeding up and we're losing the magnetosphere, that means there's more energy coming directly into the core of the Earth. The cosmic rays are flooding and hitting and interacting with whatever is inside the core of the Earth. And they're exciting it. They're causing perhaps expansion. So perhaps the Earth is expanding due to being hit by increased cosmic, galactic, and solar rays, because the magnetosphere is in decline. And as the magnetosphere continues to decline, which is going to, there's going to be more and more excitation of the interior of the Earth, causing it to expand, causing volcanism. The volcanoes are going off in response to this. There are fissures developing. And where are the fissures developing? They're developing in the ocean beds, because that is the point that is the weakest. It's the thinnest. It is what gives way when the expansion happens. And so when openings come and you have mantle, exposed to the water, perhaps there's all of a sudden a subduction of the water down into the core, or down into the mantle itself. And perhaps that explains some of the water just mysteriously receding. As the ocean is opening up and forming gigantic cracks, it's flowing down into the cracks and leaving beaches exposed. And then also conversely, in other areas, it's welling up. And where it's welling up, it's actually forcing the water inland. So like off the coast of the Bahamas, perhaps you have the ocean floor rising there with expansion, being lifted upwards with expansion. And this is pushing the water in over the land, causing one island to become two. So perhaps this is getting to be a possibility with everything that's happening. Perhaps the booms are being caused by the electromagnetic interaction with the excitation of the inner plasma material within the core of the Earth, causing, because we definitely, I personally believe in the electric universe theory, and this all seems to make pretty good sense to me, and many of you may agree, and a ton of you probably won't agree. But let me hear your comments on all this. When you think about it, the gas giants, like Jupiter and Saturn and Uranus and Neptune, they're at some point probably going to turn into stars. And they are stars waiting to happen. And it's just a matter of the right conditions happening. And who's to say? We don't even know what is going on now in those planets. We do know there's a change. We've seen measurable changes in all the planets in our solar system. And so the sun triggers this evolutionary journey through the sun's own evolutionary journey. And so with the sun going to a global or a grand solar minimum, and or something even more severe, some again believe that what we have now, and I gotta admit to you guys, every single day I'm out there taking photos of the sun. Every single day. And I'm seeing a lot of weird things coming out with these photos. And for one, the colors just don't match. It was a yellow. It was more yellow. It's not. It's more of a white now. And, there's just so many weird dynamics. I'm getting some photos that are showing like almost a superimposed circle upon a circle. Almost as if there's something just about right next to the sun, but not exactly where the sun is, right, just slightly off. Like there's something in front of where the sun is. I don't know. I'm starting to have more question marks, and where I thought the whole sun simulator thing was total crap at first, I'm starting to change my mind and starting to wonder. I'm not sold, but there's something weird going on there for sure. But getting back to this, there are changes in every planet in our solar system. It's been measured. And it is the sun's own journey that's doing this. And so as the sun decreases in its strength, it's also allowing more cosmic energy to come in. And it makes me think about the movie 2001 and then its sequel, 2010. And remember in 2010 when it was Saturn or was it Jupiter that ignited in that movie? I'm trying to remember it now. And I think it was Jupiter in the movie. It was supposed to be Saturn, I think, in the book. I think that's how it was. And it eventually ignited into a second sun. And so then the moons of Jupiter became new planets, and we got a message to go ahead and explore those, except for Europa, which is the water planet, which probably has life on it inside the oceans. And that's probably why that was said, that one was off limits. Very, very interesting stuff. But perhaps there are those type of changes going on inside those as well. And perhaps it's Jupiter's, Saturn's, Neptune's, and Uranus's destiny to become suns in their own right, to actually become stars, to ignite at some point, and have their own little solar systems. Very, very interesting thoughts. And the plasma universe theory is something that I would encourage everybody to go ahead and look into and to read into. It's very, very interesting stuff. Now, psychics, some of the top psychics can tell you, and this is out of Barbara Brennan's book, Hands of Light, and she is one of the healers that I've studied. And at the core, every human is a star. So ultimately, you and I are all stars as well. At the core, if we could see our true reality, is that we are beings of light. That is what we truly are. This physical shell is something that we will shed, but we will go on. And I totally believe in that. I do not believe that we die with the physical body's death. I've experienced way too much to believe that. And I do believe that each of us is a star, in effect. We are energy, and we're not going to go off into nothingness. We'll continue to exist. We are consciousness itself exploring its creation. And that is truly my belief. And so the energies that are bombarding our planet, causing expansion, are also bombarding us, causing an expansion in our consciousness, in our awareness. And this is part of the ascension process. And ascension is just simply that we are raising up into a higher vibrational frequency. And we know the Schumann resonance of the Earth is changing. It's changing. It's increasing. So the Earth's own harmony, its own energetic signature is changing. Everything is changing because of this time period that we're in. So while it might sound really dire with the Earth changes, and believe me, the Earth changes are serious, and they are upon us, ultimately, we're evolving into a higher, better state of being. So this channel up here on YouTube is Mr. Fix-It Rick, who is a mad scientist, you could say, but a brilliant man. And he has done some experiments that are incredible, especially with plasma. So what happens when you excite plasma to high degrees? Well, what happens is you get exactly what we have going on in the Earth and also in the sun itself. You end up with a perfect North Pole. You end up with basically tropical regions like the Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn. What happens when that frequency goes off a little bit, then the poles split and you'll have multiple North Poles and it'll wobble like a top. And that's kind of what's going on right now. And it's all about the pole shift. So fascinating stuff. And the second YouTube channel is Dutch Sinise, who is the god of earthquakes, the guru of earthquakes. This gentleman is brilliant, and I heartily recommend everybody check out his channel. He is awesome. Explains everything perfectly with great patience and complete understanding. And so definitely watch the full experiment.
Leads to some kind of power source, or some kind of gravity, or some kind of understanding of the Earth's core, or magnetic fields in general, become visible when you super oscillate plasmas in a sphere. How about that? That alone, in its own right, super oscillating, and that's a term I guess I'm creating, super oscillating something to the point where it then goes and breaks into its own magnetic north. Now watch, here's a great shot of it. One more time. Mr. Fix-It Rick. Now I wrote him and I said, hey, do you still have this this device, you know? And he wrote me back, and I don't want to get into that now. He apparently is getting his own problems on the tubes. But it's obvious. Look, hard magnetic north immediately. That's not a coincidence. And then look at the magnetic bands. It looks like the equator and where we would imagine the tropics of the Earth to be, right? Look, I mean, it's obvious. It takes out these magnetic bands that go to a north and south polarity, and it's almost exactly like what we'd imagine the Earth's magnetic field to be, which would then point towards Earth's core as a super oscillating ball of plasma, superheated plasma, not like this, it's much hotter. Think of a lightning bolt, but doing this. Think of lightning bolts, millions and billions of lightning bolts, doing this all at once in a giant rotating super oscillating core that would then come out and put out this heat, and it reflects like it's a solid.
So what we have going on, perhaps it could all be explained by this. I look forward to you guys' comments. As always, this is just, stuff to throw out there and explain. Perhaps this is what's happening. I'm not saying this is it definitively. I'm not a scientist. But at the same time, I'm definitely going to investigate every single possibility I could think of or is brought up to me. So when you guys bring up stuff, I'll check into it for sure, and I'll get back to you with what I find. And I look forward to your comments as always. As always, also thumbs up, help support the channel. Share and subscribe and share. Get the word out. Let's pick each other's brains. Let's pick each other up. Let's keep each other aware, and let's move forward together. I thank you guys so very, very much. Take care. I totally appreciate you. Be well.